Hello, everyone. This actually is going to be a two-part class. Sorry about that, but I got the video to work this time at the church, and unfortunately, I forgot to turn on the recording. So that's why there's two parts. The second half, I realized it and turned it on. So we'll begin the class by doing our prayer. Everybody take a nice big deep breath and let it all go. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. Amen. Right, I thought I would start the class by sharing one of my all-time favorite quotes of the course. Not that there aren't many that I love, but this one is near the top. And it goes like this: the holiest of all spots on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love, and they come quickly to the living temple where a home for them has been set up. There is no place in heaven holier. And that would be on text 562 if anybody wanted to look that one up. Now, one of the reasons why I really like that quote is in relationship to what we're working on is because we've been working on this concept of grievances and what are the blocks, what's keeping me from experiencing that connection and that holiness that quote referred to. And it is those grievances and as the course would call it, the ego's idle wishes that keep us there. And if we want to come to a place of understanding what that is, we have to really get a full understanding of what the ego is up to. So we're going to begin with workbook 73, and we did work on this a bit last week, and I am going to highlight a couple of the first couple paragraphs, and then we will go on from there. So this paragraph is called, I will there be light. And the first line says, today we are considering the will you share with God. So the will we share with God is this will of light. That's what we are. That's our true identity. And when we disengage from the ego, this is God's will over here, and this is the will of the ego over here. And as long as I'm here holding on to any grievances, I can't have access to the light that is here all the time. And though technically this would cover over this, but because of the example here, it's easier to see it that way. But the recognition that the light and the truth are here all the time, they're just covered over by the block of awareness called the ego thought system, which is the dualistic, the separating thought system versus the thought system of oneness. And then I want to call your attention to the words ego's idle wishes. They're actually found in this paragraph 3 times. So when he was talking about what we share with God, which is the connection of our true self, he goes on to say, this is not the same as the ego's idle wishes, out of which darkness and nothingness arise. And if you think about the word idle, and I immediately think of your car idling, and the car is just running, but you're not doing anything. You're not going anywhere. You're not moving in any direction. The car is just idling. And if you think about that in relationship to what this is saying, is that as an ego, our wishes are idle. They're not real. They're illusion. They're the dream, all the adjectives that are used throughout the course to explain it. And those all cover up our true identity with truth. And then, as he says, out of which darkness and nothingness arise. And why he uses that example is versus the light, when you choose for the ego, it yields you the darkness. And then he goes on to say, and nothingness arises, because nothing of the ego is actually real. Now, the challenge we have is that most of us still believe we are egos. We don't believe we're an illusion. We do believe this thought system is our true identity. But what Jesus is saying is these idle wishes are simply going to bring you darkness and nothingness. And if you want to, as it says, I will there be light. If I want that, I have to be willing to start by observing my idle wishes and what they are and why they're there and what I can do to remove them. So in line 4 in that same paragraph, it says the ego's idle wishes are unshared and therefore have no power at all. What that means is when you're in a separated state, you have your idle wishes, your brother has his or her idle wishes. So we're all in this same boat together. It's just that my wishes and your wishes look very different. So then we use that to conflict with each other, when in essence, none of them are real. Only the Holy Spirit side yields true reality. This is just the storyline of the ego. And what Jesus is saying, these idle wishes of the ego not only are not shared, but they have no power. Then he goes on to say its wishes are not idle in the sense that they make a world of illusion in which your belief can be very strong. What he means by that ultimately this is not real. But while you accept it as your reality, you're going to believe it's real, though it's still an idle wish. You're going to believe it's real. And as long as you believe it is real, you're going to reap the effects of making this choice, which again, you're going to believe are real as well. But they are simply an illusion, but they feel very strong while we're identified with them. Then he goes on to say, but they are idle indeed in terms of creation. So within the dream of our reality of this doesn't feel like an idle wish. It feels very solid, very real. There's a place in the course where it talks about it's like a citadel, it's impenetrable. And that's what the ego thought system appears to be. Although Jesus comes along and says, but no, none of this is real. This is like a cloud that you could drop a penny in or a quarter in, and it would simply drop through and go to the ground because it has no substance to it. Only this has true substance to it. But again, since we're so addicted to this and we believe this is who we are, then we do have the experience as though this is very real. And I would add to that, not only very real, very serious, very important, very, I guess that's all the adjectives I have here. Okay. And then he goes on to say, they make nothing that is real. And our goal, I guess you could say, in the process of practicing the course is to start by realizing that you do believe this is real, and then continuing to take it to the Holy Spirit, where at one point in time, you will now know that this is real, and you will unequivocally know that none of this is real. But that's a process through which we continue to learn and then practice, and then have the effects or the results that begin to occur when we continue to choose this instead of this. Because again, remember, the first shift towards the separation or the ego was a choice. Son of God wanted to know what it would be like if he's separated, if he was in charge, if he was God, if he was an individual, special and different. And now I can be special and different in opposition to my brother, all of which take me out of the realm of my understanding of what truth actually is. So again, the idle wish means separation from the will of God. That's the ego's idle wish. I want it thus. I want to be separate. I want to be in charge. I want to be God, basically. And as a result of that, we get the effects of making that choice. And the effects of making that choice are grievances, are sin, guilt, fear, anxiety attack, you name it, that is all rolled up in this ball, of which none of that ever enters here at all. So paragraph number 2, which is truly a profound paragraph, and I'm going to reread this one as well because I think it's so significant. So idle wishes and grievances are partners or co-makers in picturing the world you see. The wishes of the ego gave rise to it, and the ego's need for grievances, which are necessary to maintain it, people it with figures that seem to attack you and call for righteous judgment. These figures become the middlemen the ego employs to traffic its grievances. They stand between your awareness of your brother's reality. Beholding them, you do not know your brothers or yourself. Again, profound paragraph. So idle wishes, so in other words, the idle wish of wanting to be separate, and grievances or issues that the ego puts into place to keep the world going, I guess you could say, to keep the world having issues. So I have to solve the problems. I have to get that other person to do something different, are what keeps this journey, what keeps it going. And I believe I gave an example of a show on Star Trek, one of the original Star Trek shows, where an entity had gotten on the ship, and on the ship, it was instilling so that people would get upset and angry and start fighting with each other. And this entity actually lived off of this energy. Okay, so then it kept perpetuating it. And I think it was Kirk that finally figured out what was going on, and he explained it to everybody and explained that if we want this to go away, we have to do this differently. And the differently here in the course is recognizing how significant grievances are and what a setup grievances have been to keep this party going. So that eventually, when we start getting pulled in to the reaction to a grievance, instead of going the same cycle that we've been going through for since the Big Bang, basically, can be used for a different purpose and then taken to an experience of being healed. So idle wishes and grievances are partners. So they go hand in hand in this journey, or co-makers. And be very aware that the course is very specific as to, if we work with Jesus or God, we are creators. The moment we chose for separation, everything from that point on was what we chose to make. Make and creation are on opposite ends of the scale according to this. So in other words, this would be creation, this would be making. So anything from here on is what the ego made before that creation was in existence. So again, idle wishes and grievances are partners or co-makers in picturing the world you see. So everything you picture on the outside is coming from the idle wishes of the ego, as well as the grievances that it upholds to keep this going. The wishes of the ego gave rise to it. So the ego wanted a purpose and a value of the illusion to keep it going, so that we would always spend all of our time back and forth here instead of going to where healing was. And as long as that's going on, I don't have to go back home. And if I'm afraid to go back home, I prefer to stay here. But all the while I'm doing this, I play the part of an innocent victim and blame it on the perpetrator or the person or thing outside of me, and point the finger to whatever that may be as to, you're the problem, not me. I'm the innocent victim. If you would go away, leave me alone, change, or do something else, then I could be okay. Well, this course is trying to help us understand that that is inaccurate, that the only way that change is going to happen is when you come to where the cause is, and then drop the cause, which drops the effects, and choose to connect with what truth is. As long as you're playing over here, nothing, no matter how strong your intent to heal, no matter how much you want to internally find that magic potent of whatever you want to do, it's never going to be found here, because the potent or the answer is never found here. The answer is found in the shift that takes place up here, which then automatically heals what we see and experience in the world. Again, the wishes of the ego gave rise to it, so it got brought forward by that choice or that wish, and the ego's need for grievances. The grievances then keep that storyline going. And there is that wonderful line in the course where it said, the problem was that tiny mad idea, which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. And many people say, well, I don't remember that tiny mad idea of wanting to separate from God. But the point is, every moment you hold on to a grievance, you are reinforcing that first original choice to separate. Because if you're holding a grievance, you believe there's a problem out there that needs to be fixed, and it is not going to ever be fixed until you get out of the way and allow the Holy Spirit to fill that space with a totally different answer that you can't even figure out. In fact, Jesus goes so far to say that not only can't you solve the problem, you don't even, solve the problem. You don't even know what the problem is. So in the intent of trying to do your very best within the world, it's never going to happen, because you don't understand where the real problem is coming from. You always think the problem is coming here. This is not where the problem comes. This is where the problem comes from, and this is where the solution will then come. Nothing here, though we can manipulate the world, change things around a little bit, and so on, and still have some what appears to be success in the world where things get a little bit better, but it won't heal on the level that this is talking about. And it will just recreate itself in another form. Because if I believe I'm less than love, which is always the result of choosing for the ego, nothing I do over here is going to heal that, because the answer is walk over to here and find out who you really are. So if I'm over here trying to fix this and change it, I'm not stepping over here where the real healing takes place. All right, so then he goes on in this line 2 to say which are necessary to maintain it. So the ego needs its wish and it needs its grievance to perpetuate the storyline. And then it goes on to say he peoples it with figures that seem to attack you and call for righteous judgment. So once we projected our guilt, sin, and fear into somebody else, we now feel like an innocent victim, and we feel justified to attack our brother back, because I righteously have that right to do that, because I'm an innocent victim and they're the perpetrator. All set, package, wrap. but that will never heal the situation. And again, this whole idea of righteous judgment, if you notice the word righteous is actually in quotes, which always refers to the ego. So the ego is never, or excuse me, the Holy Spirit would never righteously judge anything. All right, so he goes on to say, these figures become the middlemen the ego employs to traffic in grievances. So as long as we're barking up the wrong tree, you might say, we're never going to come to any type of healing, because we're always just recycling the storyline of the ego, which of course is exactly what the ego wants you to do, because as long as that's going on, it's got everything taken care of. It doesn't have to work very hard. It's in charge. God's out of the picture. And keep remembering, it's either oneness or duality. God, ego. You can't have both. It's one or the other. Okay, I had to coordinate that a bit, but one or the other. And if we want duality, that, or if we engage in duality, it always means there's two, because in oneness there's nothing to fight against or compare ourselves to. It simply is what it is. All right. They stand between your awareness and your brother's reality. And this is so important, because you see, we projected our guilt, sin, and fear on our brother. Now we see our brother encased in that, and we look on our brother and don't see his true reality. It is only over here that you will then see your brother through clarity, because you're not covering over your brother with the lie that you hold in your mind that's keeping you from clearly seeing him. And ultimately, as long as I'm seeing my brother as different, I'm here as well. It's only when we step over here that now I have clarity. I see my brother clearly. And of course, would even go so far as to say, and now you will see God clearly, just like you will not see either yourself, your brother, or God clearly and from a place of truth, because you're coming from the story of the lie. All right, so beholding them, you do not know your brothers or yourself. As long as we continue to play the ego game, we will never know our brother, and we will never know our capital S self. Again, this is all wrapped up in one big, huge package. And there's a place in the course that it talks about prison, and it explains that the prisoner and the guard are both in prison. You know, the guard thinks he's freer than the inmate, but in truth, they're both there together. And if you want to release one, you have to release them both. This is a win-win situation across the board. All right, so I think I will just go on to paragraph number 4, where I'm going to start with line 3. It is not heaven, but the light of heaven shines on it. In other words, heaven is actually found up here, but this is the closest to heaven, which is the reflection of love from the healed mind, is the closest we can get while we're still in a body to have that experience. And I've given the example before, but can often describe that as the difference between having a picture of your grandfather who you dearly love in your wallet versus having your grandfather stand in front of you. The picture is the best reflection within that, but the true grandfather would be up here. But within the illusion, it's way better than this. All right, where else? Okay, so then it says, yet the light that shines upon this world reflects your will, and so it must be in you that we will look for it. So again, it is coming from within. It's not coming from without, but our eyes, our ears, our senses all pick up this information incorrectly, because the problem was we had this separation. We then projected into the world what the world was going to look like. And then we forgot that we were the ones that projected it. And when this comes back to us, we immediately attack it justifiably, as we read. But it didn't come from this, it came from this. So this is where the problem has to be solved, not down here. All right, so again, yet the light that shines upon the world reflects your will, and so it must be in you that we will look for it. And that wonderful example of the man who lost his ring, and he was out underneath the the street light looking for it. And somebody comes along and says, "What are you looking for?" And he says, "My ring." And he said, "Well, where did you lose it?" And he said, "I lost it in my house." And the man said, "Well, why are you looking out here?" And he explains, "Because there's a light here and I can see better." Well, we're looking in the wrong place to solve the problem when we're trying to solve it here. We're looking under the street light, where the answer is look in your mind that set this all up to make this appear to be real, so that I would be justified righteously to attack my brother, which will never bring us back to the wholeness and truth of love. All righty, so now we're going to go to paragraph number 5. Your picture of the world can only mirror what is within. The source of neither light nor darkness can be found without. Grievances darken your mind, and you look out on a darkened world. Forgiveness lifts the darkness, reasserts your will, and lets you look upon a world of light. And again, I will there be light is the name of this workbook lesson. We have repeatedly emphasized that the barrier of grievances is easily passed and cannot stand between you and your salvation. The reason is very simple. Do you really want to be in hell? Do you really want to weep and suffer and die? All right, so your picture of the world can only mirror what is within. And I think it's important that we clarify that to some degree, in the respect that, we can take the example of Jesus dying on the cross. And Jesus dying on the cross, there were people that were doing horrible, awful things to him. And most of us hanging on the cross today, I know for sure for myself, would not take that with much friendliness or enjoyment or whatever. I would feel very justified to attack what was happening to me. And yet what this is saying is that Jesus had all those things happen to him, but because he was unequivocally aligned with his true self, nothing that happened on the outside was going to affect him. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just didn't take his peace away unequivocally, because he was totally aligned with that truth. So it's not that things necessarily will all go away. It's that when I'm in the world, but not of the world, I'm not affected by anything that takes place in the world. All right, so the source of neither light nor darkness can be found without. But isn't that where 24 hours a day, I'm focusing in on what's out there and what has taken my peace away that appears to be out there? But the answer is it's not going to be where we're going to find how to solve this difficulty, because it doesn't live out there. Grievances darken your mind and you look out on a darkened world. And if you think about wearing sunglasses, if you walk into the building with sunglasses on, everything you look at is tainted, not just the people or the places. Everything is tinted, okay? And as he says, grievances darken your mind and you look out on a darkened world. So if you think of the sunglasses as the grievances, you either have the glasses on, or you're living and expressing through the grievance, or as it says, forgiveness lifts the darkness, reasserts your will, and lets you look upon a world of light. But be very aware, you cannot have the glasses on and off at the same moment. In any given moment, it's either the glasses are on or the glasses are off. And you have to decide, where do I want to put my energy? Where do I want my understanding of love to be? Do I want it to be in the darkness, or do I want to take the darkness away so I can see clearly? And again, it really is that simple, but we're just so doggone addicted to this thought system that it's hard for many of us to pull ourselves away to find out what this answer would look like. But as long as I'm wearing this, the glasses or the darkness, I can't see clearly what the light is. All right, so again, forgiveness lifts the darkness, asserts your will, because when I take off the glasses of the belief in the ego, I'm literally reasserting my will, and lets you look upon the world of light. So I will see the world through that lens of clarity and truth, rather than the shades and the darkness of the grievances. We have repeatedly emphasized that the barrier of grievances is easily passed and cannot stand between you and your salvation. So what he's telling us, this really isn't that hard, guys. Now, because we're so addicted to the ego, it may seem very challenging at times. And the bottom line is, the real deal is that I'm not willing to let go of my grievances to find out what truth is. And the only way I can do that is when I do relinquish it. All right. So again, he's saying we have repeatedly emphasized this barrier of grievances, and it can be moved. You can easily pass it. Do you want it? Do I have to unequivocally want that? And he says the reason is very simple. Do you really want to be in hell? Do you really want to weep and suffer and die? And know that that's what is a result of making this choice. We're not going to go here because we're having a good time. We're going to go here because this becomes so intolerable. We can't tolerate it any longer. And we want another way. Just like Helen and Bill, when they had that fateful experience of, there must be another way. And I do want to emphasize that, when they had that moment, and then as they continued to take down the course and do all that, work through all that material, while they were working, they had a one-minded experience, but they still struggled on a personal nature throughout the rest of their lives of trying to put these principles into fruition, because it's not just a one-time deal. It's a consistent and practiced process of which we have to get intellectually, eventually understand it, and then put into practice. And it's like, the boat going the wrong way, and that turnaround is very difficult because all the momentum is going this way. Well, all the momentum is going in the direction we set that boat on. And it's going to continue to try to keep going that way. And when we say, no, I want to turn it around, Those initial stages are the most challenging because they're anti what we've been doing in the direction we've been going since the Big Bang. So that's a big turnaround, although he said very clearly, this, not a big deal. But to the degree we believe, accept, and live through the lens of the ego, it feels like a very big deal. But in the next line, he does promise, you will succeed today. The time appointed for the release of the Son of God from hell and from all idle wishes. So he's promising us that this will work if you do what he asks us to do. And one of the things he's talking about in the sections we've been working on are these grievances. If somebody was sitting on your shoulder and whispered to you every single time you had a grievance and said, you could choose love instead of this. My guess is by the end of the day, we'd want to smack this little creature silly, because it would represent that I'm not really all that excited about relinquishing my control, my belief that I know that I'm what the answer is, and my need to make myself better than the other person. So these are all things that keep us from just, why don't I just turn around and go the right direction? And that's because we are so attached and so addicted to our ego way of thinking. And the bottom line is, we believe we're right. And we do believe we're justified to not only attack my brother, but we also believe we're justified to prove him wrong because I'm right. And of course, they have the same MO coming in from the other side. And what results is this: no way that they can penetrate each other. And when he talked about the idea of you can't know your brother as long as you're playing here, it's only when you stop and allow the truth to come in that you can know who your brother is. Now, will your brother join you there, or will your brother continue to play the game of duality? And that's not really your concern. Your concern is, I chose to connect with truth. And usually what happens is this one tries to push a little harder to get you back over here where your contract belongs. But if you continue to hold firm the best of your ability, eventually they'll either join you in that place or they'll go find somebody else to play that game with. Either way, the bottom line is you've done what is required, which is go from this to this. Again, this being the ego, this being the choice for the Holy Spirit. All right. And then, again, with this question, do you really want to be in hell? Well, first of all, I have to become aware that I am in hell, because, there are enough nice things in the world that draw us in. And we know from the hero chart. Where's the hero chart? I'm not seeing it. I guess I forgot to pull it out. Anyways, here we go. The hero chart. There's lots of good things. This is all positive over here. This is the parts that we don't like. We like these. And there's lots of places we're drawn into. Oh, this is good. But none of these take you above the battleground to where real healing is. It certainly would probably be better over here than over here. But when you choose for this, since this is a roller coaster ride, you always get this. And the roller coaster ride goes up and down and up and down and up and down. If you want the highs, the lows come with it, with this deal. But truth always remains above the battleground and is a constant. So again, do you really want to be in hell? But I have to recognize that I am in hell. And that is a serious problem in this course, because for the most part, we're not aware that this is all not the best place to be. Not just a little tweaking here and there. It's a wipeout. And then he goes on to say, do you really want to weep and suffer and die. And when we choose for the ego, we will continue to weep and suffer. And what he means about dying, in this thought system, there's only eternity. There is no death. Only here do we experience death. So even though you might choose for this one time and you pop back over here, you're not going to alleviate yourself from that belief in death. But as you align with this completely, you will align with the understanding of eternity and no death, because death doesn't live over here. Good place to be in my book. Now, look at all the ways that death enters into our world. The fear and concern of my death, of other people's death, how death really weaves itself throughout this dream. If I look at this piece of paper, and I want to move on to the next one, then this piece of paper has to die. And, the day and the night concept. The day ends or dies to allow room for the next one to come forth. And in oneness, that doesn't exist. Death isn't a facet of what this is. All right. So truth and illusions both are in your mind and not outside. And the only way you can access healing of this storyline is to go to the Holy Spirit instead of the ego. Again, you cannot wear your glasses and have your glasses off at the same time. It's one or the other, one or the other. And, if you go to the eye doctor and they put those little funny things on and they'll always flick the lenses and they'll say, is this better? Is this better? Is this better? Is this better? And you keep doing that until you find the correct vision or sight from those lenses. Well, the question is do you like this better or do you like this better? Do you like this better or do you like this better? And when we start to recognize that this is always going to yield suffering, pain, death, anxiety, fear, guilt, sin, you name it, all the attributes that are found in the ego side of the board are going to be found as long, ego's over here, are going to be found as long as we continue to wear the story of the ego. And let me just real quickly read through the adjectives that come with choosing for the ego. Fear, void, separation, split mind, ignorance, form, death. Remember I just said death. Nothingness, emptiness, false self, special love, guilt, illusion, uncertainty, time, hate, terror, dread, and chaos. And be very aware, this is a short list compared to all the other aspects of the illusion that can come in and crawl in there and eat you alive. And let me just read the ones on the side of heaven. God, totality, oneness, mind, formlessness, life, creation, unity, true self, capital T and capital S, love, Christ, truth, knowledge, eternity versus what we said on this side, which is death, and then joy. So if you think about every time you're wearing your glasses, you are choosing for this. When you take your glasses or your belief system of the ego off, this goes away and only this side remains. So we need to get really, really, really clear on what buying the package of the ego is going to yield you. This is going to continue to yield this, much like catalog, ordering something on the catalog or from Amazon, as long as this keeps getting perpetuated, that's what's going to be put out into the world. And then you're going to, if you are affected by this, you're going to recreate this and bring it back and bring it back and bring it back. And is that what you want? Be aware, when we made that initial choice to separate, we thought this was going to be a better deal. We thought I was going to take all the attributes of God and I'm going to bring them over here. Only I can now be God. I can be in charge. I can be a special and an individual. And who needs God with all that? But the trick ended up being that we got to play the part of separating, and now we are the ego God, but we left love, joy, peace, and eternity behind because it's one or the other. It's not bring this with me and I got a bigger package full of things that work for me. Doesn't work that way. You're either choosing this, which all the attributes of this come with you, or you choose this and the attributes of the ego come with you. So that's why it's so important for us to continue to observe, become aware of what the ego's up to and how frequently you're pulled into the ego. And it's almost like your head spins. It happens so quickly. But the more you become aware of that, the more you're going to have the opportunity to make another choice. And again, even if you do hear a voice or you're reminded, whatever way you might say that, of the fact that there is another choice, doesn't mean you're ready to make that choice. And the very fact that you're recognizing there is another choice is huge, 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 because before I was brain dead. I only had this recourse. I had to live out of this experience and I had no other choices. So now we're being given another choice. He's asking us to observe how much, even though we think and we might even say that I want this above all else, observe your grievances. And if you respond to them with attack, I don't really want this. I'm still hanging with this guy. And that, again, is a choice that we all have to continue to recognize so that we know that there's another way, and that when I'm ready to choose that other way is there, available and waiting for me. And it's also important to realize that illusions will never, ever make you happy. I mean, yes, there's going to be, moments in life that are going to be nicer than other moments in life, but you're never going to access that true, undeniable happiness that is, stays and sticks with you. It's just going to be a fleeting moment over here, but taste of that. And we really want to end up here where that is what is running the show. And ultimately, we have to come to an awareness that God was right. My true identity is who I am, which means I'm wrong, which means I'm wrong in the sense that I aligned with the ego that was going to bring me other than what God has to offer. And do I want, as the question was, do you really want to be in hell? And do you really want to weep, suffer, and die? If we really, really, really get the concepts that come with the choice of the ego that are undeniably going to run the show. And when you catch yourself playing in the show, to stop yourself and question, is this what I really want? There's a beautiful line, getting back to this idea of you don't see your brother clearly, that says it's not that you won't see your brother clearly, it's that you want to be able to see your brother clearly. But if you're honest with yourself, do you want to see your brother clearly? Do you want to see your brother innocent? Or do you want to prove that you're right and your brother is wrong? And each of us have to practice this on our own. And each of us will have many challenges that will put us in our place, you might want to say, until we really get to the point where we truly understand what the Course is offering us, see the value of it, and then begin to drop or at least beginning to be willing to drop our investment in the ego so that we can then be shown what the truth and love is all about. And I assure you, I don't care who you are. I don't care how long you've been working on this course. This is a process that's not natural. It doesn't flow. It's not easy. It really kind of whacks with our head because the natural flow, as we know it, is always over here. But that doesn't mean that you can't, through training, and in the workbook lessons, Jesus basically called it mind training. And it's mind training because my mind is going to be trained to choose the other side. But as long as I don't know there's a problem, I'm not going to make that choice. It has to be an awareness that this isn't working. Something's wrong here. And then eventually we'll come to know that my brother and I are the same. So how could we have a conflict? Now, that's probably many steps ahead for the average bear, but it is a possibility and it will take us to truth. All right, so paragraph 6, forget the ego's argument which seek to prove all this is really heaven. You know it is not so. You cannot want this for yourself. There is a point beyond which illusions can go. Suffering is not happiness, and it is happiness you really want. Such is your will in truth, and so salvation is your will as well. You want to succeed in what you are trying to do today. We undertake it with your blessing and your glad accord. So Jesus is saying, forget the ego's argument, which seeks to prove all this is really heaven. You know, as we each individually begin to observe the world and become aware it's not heaven. Something's wrong here. It's a story that's just not working. But until we get to that point, the course is going to be of very little value for us, because why would I need to go through this whole process if I am an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control? What's the big deal? All right, so you want to accept God's plan, you share, and you want to accept God's plan because you share in it. Well, when you're over here, you're literally sharing with God, and then that will translate into sharing with your brother as well. And this is our true nature. This is the false nature that's been made up as a camouflage to keep us from remembering who we are. All right, so you want to accept God's plan because you share it. You have no will that cannot really oppose it, and you do not want to do so. So our will has to be, show me who I am. If it's anything else, we're walking down the wrong aisle. Salvation is for you. And what is salvation? Salvation is remembering that I don't know. I don't know. Not exactly in line with student recognition. All right. So salvation is for you, and salvation again would be the remembrance that I am one with God. Above all else, you want the freedom to remember who you really are. And again, as long as I'm playing over here, I will not know who I really am, because I'm looking at the shadow. I'm seeing my brother through the shadow, and that's because the shadow was chosen, or the belief in separation was chosen. And once again, above all else, you want the freedom to remember who you really are. And when we really get to that point, I think the course starts to be a little bit more palatable, because I really know what my goal is. I really know that I'm not doing this for something special. I'm doing this to find out who I am, so that I won't be disrupted by the illusion any longer. All right, today it is the ego that stands powerless before your will. And what that means is, when we align with the ego, it appears that the ego is powerful. As we begin to align with the Holy Spirit, there'll come a point in time where we are completely aligned with this thought system, and we aren't going to any longer give power to the ego. Again, you're giving power to this or this at any given moment. And the more we give it to this, the less we give it to this. So it becomes a rather no-brainer. We continue to associate with where the truth comes, not where the lie is. Your your will is free, and nothing can prevail against it. So no matter how thick those clouds appear to be, no matter how heavy the situation is that you're going through, you always have the recourse of asking to see it through God's or Jesus' eye. And keep remembering, this story is the absolute opposite of this story. So when we relinquish this, then we have access to this. And when we want that only, it will be ours. And in the meantime, we'll do like a teeter-totter ride, back and forth till we finally change and go back to the truth as we know ourselves. All right, so I think we'll close now. We don't need to say the prayer, because in the second half, we will say the prayer. So look up the second part of this video and enjoy the video. See you next time. Bye.